All right, let's talk about Terraform. Today, we're zeroing in on the single most important word you're going to see, resource. Seriously, this one word trips up almost everybody when they're starting out, but I promise, by the end of this, you'll see it's actually way simpler than you think. Let's dive in.
And yeah, this really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? You open up your first Terraform file and that word resource is just everywhere. It feels like some kind of abstract, super technical term, and it can totally stop you in your tracks when you're just trying to figure things out.
So, what's the deal? What is it really? Well, the good news is the answer is incredibly simple. Let's just break it all down.
Okay, let's cut right through all the jargon and get to the absolute core of it. This is really all you need to remember.
And there you have it. That's it. That's the big secret. When you see the word resource in a Terraform file, just translate it in your head to one real thing, one thing that you want to exist out there in the cloud.
So, what kind of thing are we talking about here? Well, it could be a single virtual server, or maybe a database, or a virtual network. The key word here is single. It's always one individual item, not a whole group of servers, just one server.
This brings us to my absolute favorite analogy for this, the shopping list. Just imagine your entire Terraform file is your shopping list. Each resource you write is just one line item on that list. You know, a carton of milk, a loaf of bread, a dozen eggs. Each one is a separate, individual thing you need.
Okay, so if the resource is the item on our shopping list, then what is Terraform's job in all of this? This is another spot where beginners can get a little mixed up, but it's just as straightforward.
Think of it this way. You and Terraform have different jobs. Your job is to write the shopping list. You define the resources you want. Terraform? Well, Terraform is your personal shopper. It takes your list, goes to the store, which is your cloud provider, like AWS or Azure, and does all the work for you. Terraform doesn't become the server, it builds the server based on your list.
So, how do you actually write one of these little shopping list items in your code? Well, it follows a really simple three-part blueprint every single time.
Every single resource you ever write will have these three parts. First, you literally type the word resource. That's you telling Terraform, hey, pay attention, I want to create something. Second, you give it the type, like AWS_instance. That's the official name for what you want, like the brand name at the store. And third, you give it a name, like web server. Now this is just your own personal nickname for it, so you can point to it later. That's the whole pattern.
Okay, so a resource is just one thing. It's got a simple three-part structure. You might be thinking, why are we spending so much time on this? Well, it's because this one simple idea, it's the absolute foundation of everything you will ever do with Terraform.
I want you to think of a resource as a Lego brick. It's the most basic, fundamental building block you have. Every single thing you build, whether it's a tiny little website or a massive global application, it's all just a collection of these individual resource bricks that you put together.
So you define one resource for your web server. Then you define another resource for your database, and a third one for the network that connects them. Suddenly, by putting these simple, individual shopping list items together, you're not just getting groceries anymore. You're building a complete, functioning system. And that's the real power here, taking small, simple pieces and combining them to create something complex and amazing.
All right, to finish up, let's quickly bust two of the most common myths that I see trip up beginners when they're first getting started with resources.
So remember that third part of the blueprint, the little nickname you give it, like web server? A lot of people assume that whatever they type there is going to be the actual host name of the server inside of AWS or Google Cloud.
No, absolutely not. That name is 100% for you and for Terraform. It's just a local label, a nickname, so Terraform knows which piece of infrastructure you're talking about in your code. The actual name of the server out in the cloud, that's a totally separate setting you configure inside the resource block. Getting this distinction right is super important.
Okay, here's the other big fear. People think, if I have a resource for a server in my file, and I run Terraform apply, and then I run it again, am I going to get a second server and a surprise bill? It's a totally valid question.
And thankfully, the answer is, again, a big reassuring no. This is where the magic of Terraform comes in. It keeps this special file called a state file. You can think of it as Terraform's memory. It remembers that it already built that server for you. So if you run the command again, it just checks its memory, looks at the cloud, and asks, does anything need to be updated? It won't just blindly create duplicates. So let's bring it all the way back to where we started. If you only remember one thing from all of this, please let it be this. Every time you see that resource block, just think to yourself, that's one real thing, one item on my shopping list that I'm telling Terraform to go build and take care of for me. Once you really get that, you've cracked the code on Terraform resources.